Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. We are live. I am here with Brandon from the Hawks Nest to talk about all things Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, the home of the NFL's first ever point shaving scandal. I'm just going to get in front of that now because any day now, I'm sure we're going to learn that Gerald Everett had the 49ers money line, but I can't blame him because I would have too.
I know a guy, if you know what I'm saying, Brendan. Okay, I know a guy.
Yeah. But we have a win to talk about this week, guys. We
Hell yeah.
got a win. The season is still technically alive. Some people are getting excited about that. Some people are excited about the game coming up this week. So we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about all the stuff that happened in the last week or so in terms of what Jody Allen might be thinking, what Russell Wilson might be thinking. There was some interesting stuff that came out in the last week. So I'm going to welcome Brandon to the show. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic, brother. It's always good to be in the Seahawks Brendan Nelson channel side of things. So love being here, man. Always.
Oh, yeah. So, first things first, before we get into some of the more maybe interesting stuff, I would say we are going to talk about something pretty interesting. We won. We won a game. We finally got that win. We got off the 3-game losing streak. Russell finally got to 101, and it feels good. It feels good to know you still own the 49ers. You still can hold that over them. You can still derail their season even when they're starting to get things going. So you play a game where you make a lot of mistakes. It's a weird game, but the offense finally seems to be doing some things right. The defense forces a series of turnovers to really help push you over the edge. And a few days later, Brandon, what are you really taking away from that game? What do you think?
As with a lot of these games, even when we win, there's not a ton of takeaways to go away through because things have sort of distilled down to such basic forms as far as how we evaluate this team and the ongoings of it. I would think that to me, I guess, and maybe it's me looking for always the little bit of the rays of sunshine in the darkness, but I look to the 30 of 36 Dave for Russell Wilson. And it's not the yards, and he should have had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions instead of 2v1 to your reference point
Mm-hmm.
on Everett and having to go back to his shy locks and get his stuff dealt with. But I look at that day and I'm really encouraged by that day, surprisingly. It's not a magnificent day. It's not one of Russell's best days of his career. But what it is what I've maybe been harping on, almost maybe somewhat obsessed with, is him getting into the mold of understanding that now the new way needs to be you in the short passing attack. The new way needs to be you with the intermediate game. It's not just all bombs away. And there was a couple bombs away in this game, but he still within the bombs also did the short stuff to me, and that was the part that I really walked away encouraged from above all else, because as you know where I stand, if I have to put kind of the front, our pill situations for me go back and forth. I oscillate between keep Russell, everyone else out, to just all full clear the deck, and it's like depending on the day you ask me, is it depending on the answer I'd give you.
Mm-hmm.
And where I think I do end up falling, though, when it's all is said and done, is to keep Russ and to get him to the offensive mind who can give him that doctorate degree, get him to the next level of his career. But doing that also is his willfulness of adopting this and accepting it and going, you're not just looking down the field all the time. You're getting this stuff up short. And as I've started, it's sort of ironic, Brendan, because when he eventually does this and embraces it and forces defenses to now come up and play the short stuff, the full irony of this is it's then going to open up all that deep stuff that he really does want in his heart of hearts to go after. He's really, as we've kind of learned, I think, in recent years, we didn't see it at first. We didn't understand it in his development, but he's a gunslinger at the end of the day in his mentality and how he wants to attack. And that's how that can open back up, whereas teams are now just killing us with cover two. Defensively, it was great to see them stop the run. They've played back to the hallmarks of Coach Carroll's defense, which is limit the big play overall and stop the run. You forced Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you at that point, as you should have. And he's not able to beat you, as he's proven in recent past history. So it's you just kind of sticking to the formula of how you beat the Niners recently. Good. It's a great step forward as far as this defense goes. The nice part's been early on this year, those tenets of limit the big play and stop the run were basically thrown out the window in a couple of games. So to see their return over the back half of the 5-6 game schedule has been encouraging overall. But again, I don't think it's they were down Debo Samuel. They only had Kittle really as a threat. Brandon Ayuk's been up and down for them. So you had a way to kind of force them into a corner, Brendan, I think is what I'm trying to say defensively, but encouraging nonetheless. A good game, but it was the Russell Wilson thing, I think, above all else. How about yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was really encouraged with the way he played. He only really hit one shot play the whole game. It was the 3rd and 14 to Metcalf, and that's when you take a shot play, 3rd and 14. I got no problem with that. That's absolutely when you're supposed to push the ball down the field. But other than that, he took a couple of shots to Metcalf at other points in the game where he just missed, and he honestly had Metcalf once or twice. But when it came to the short stuff, he was pretty much on point. He was doing everything that he needed to do within this new offense. And I made a video a couple days ago talking specifically about what Shane Waldron was brought in to do, how Wilson played the previous 5 seasons of his career, and the way Waldron's quarterbacks had played before in mostly Goff when he was in LA, and just contrasting that and saying that you brought in Shane Waldron so that Russell Wilson could start to learn how to do this stuff a little better. You didn't bring Waldron in to do the exact same stuff that you did before. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You could have just kept Schottenheimer at that point. You could have gotten you could have hired Pete Carroll's son at that point, like whatever. No, you chose to go get this guy. And I was really encouraged by that because he was getting the ball out quickly. Even early in the game when the offense was stuck in the mud and we went 3 and out like 3 straight times, there was a concerted effort to throw bubble screens and dump offs and checkdowns. It wasn't working, but eventually it started to work. Eventually we started to get into a flow. And yeah, that has to be the most important thing right now, because the more I see stuff like that in these next 5 games, the more I'm going to start to believe, maybe we could make this work. Maybe we could keep Wilson. I still have a lot of hurdles I have to get over, though.
And not to interrupt you, do you think, because it's a question I'm wondering with you on this, do you think he is basically kind of unable, almost like from a physical accuracy at short distance, just can't make that into his game? Or do you think it is more of a willfulness thing, of a commitment thing on his part?
I think it's a mentality, and I'll say it again. That's a Pete Carroll thing. Pete Carroll likes his quarterbacks to play like that. Yeah. He likes his quarterbacks to take shot plays. He likes his quarterbacks to not work the middle of the field. He likes to work the sideline. He likes to have a quarterback who runs around a lot and buys time and makes big plays. I think that's the Pete Carroll way. I don't think it's a coincidence that Wilson plays the way Carroll wants his quarterback to play. So I didn't think he was going to immediately just throw all that stuff in the trash and just go, okay, I'm going to turn into Chad Pennington or something. Yeah. But he's making progress now, and that's encouraging to me. He's got to show me more over the next 5 games with that, but it'll at least make me believe that part could be taken care of. Now, there are still a lot of things that I'm worried about going forward with Wilson on this team, not the least of which is that it'll be kind of hard to keep Wilson and get rid of Carroll and also keep Waldron. Like that's and I was thinking about this the other night. If Wilson has a really strong finish to 2021, this offseason might kind of turn into like, are you willing to get rid of Wilson if that is the cost to get rid of Carroll? Because as much as we might have to, I don't really want to bring in another offensive coordinator next year, because I don't want Wilson to have to go through a whole new year of learning a new scheme, learning new tendencies, learning new signals, learning a new playbook. I don't want this year to be a waste, especially if he's showing signs of being able to pick it up. Yeah. So we'll see how things go over the next 5 games. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but it would not surprise me if this offseason turns into a kind of thing where, well, okay, if you want to bring Wilson back, then you need to bring Waldron back, because Waldron, he's had a year under Waldron, and you don't want to yank him around into another offensive system. That's a recipe for failure for a quarterback. And then if you're going to bring back Waldron, you need to bring back Carroll, because, and then if you're going to bring back Carroll, you got to bring back Norton, and then you got to bring back Schneider. You got to bring back Pete Carroll's kid, or what is his name? Nate Carroll.
I refuse to learn it.
Yeah, it goes on and on and on from there. So those are some of the obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. But if I continue to see what I saw against the Niners, I'm going to be like, okay, it's at least more viable than it was when he was throwing up 50-50 balls against Green Bay and Arizona.
Oh, and to your point on this, it would have been ideal for us to be able to make this assessment years prior to this. If we had made this transition in 2018 to a Waldron-like type guy. Unfortunately, you did this at the last minute as the situation has seemingly started to maybe potentially wind down or get dysfunctional here with Wilson here. So then he has his injury, which just presses our timetable of assessment down and shrinks it down to a very small stage of where you have to, okay, I've seen him do it for 6 games. I guess he can do it into the future, and I'm with you. I wouldn't love going to a new offensive coordinator. The one thing I would think is maybe, just maybe, it's not as big of a jump, because with Waldron coming here, he's making this leap from the same offense for 10 years. And to your point on this, Carroll's mentality of, basically no risk it, no biscuit. Let's face it. I mean, Carroll's, he doesn't have the catchphrase, but for all intents and purposes, he's basically Bruce Arians as far as the passing attack goes. And
Right.
so if it's this first year where there's this huge, if it's like, here's where we're running our offense prior and here's a modernized offense, right? And here's an offense that's a little bit above what Waldron would run. It's like he's made this big jump up here to get to a modernized offense. And now it's just a little bit more of another leap up to a guy. And that's also in addition to now you got an offensive line maybe built around him, where it's like with Waldron right now, he doesn't have the mobile lineman to move around like he needs in his scheme, and et cetera, down that path of things. But I just for him to show it would at least let you know, okay, we can hitch our carts here to the Russell Wilson horse long term. We can know he can bring this on. It's just a matter of getting him the coach, getting him the offensive mind, full commitment to the offensive line, all that, and you can reap the rewards of it.
Hold on one second here. I got to block these spam bots here real quick. Boy. The bigger you get, the more you get spammers.
Oh, it's a running joke now. We get the porn one coming every like hour and a half, and you block it, and here comes a new one. Here is like, man, they're on it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely the most important thing coming out of that game. I completely agree. I again trying to keep my focus on things that matter, right? Because Rashad Penny had an okay game, but that doesn't really matter. He's not going to be here next year, and if he is, then we can't depend on him at all, right? Right. So I'm not thinking about that, but going on to things that matter less, but still matter. Sidney Jones played another good game. He's getting better with every game he plays. Is it possible that we don't have some desperate need at cornerback, Brandon? Is it possible you could go into the next offseason, you lose DJ Reed, and then you're going with Trey Brown and Sidney Jones as your starting outside corners? What do you feel about that?
Well, as I understand it, isn't Sidney Jones a basically street free agent because this is his 4th year?
Yeah, but he's going to be relatively cheap. I mean, he's already been kicked around the league. He's not going to cost any real money.
No, you're right there, and I think this is the issue where I think DJ Reed falls in the same category with it, where it's hard to make a determination on if you're going to strap on and bring them back in any respect if you don't know what you're going to be running from a defensive scheme, much less who the coach is. If we're running a 3-4, I probably am not bringing back DJ Reed and Sidney Jones. I think Sidney Jones is a zone corner, and that's his best place. A Carroll defense is perfect for Sidney. That's why I think part of the reason why I think he has started to look so good here is that this is his ideal type defense to land into. And so if you're running a Carroll defense, the answer is yes, Brendan. To me, the answer is, quite frankly, because I don't think DJ Reed's going to be, let's face it, he's no way he's going to get near the Shaquille Griffin deal, right? I can't see him at $10 million a year. I've been thinking about it. Can you see that? I mean, 10 million, just no way, but 3-year, $18 million deal to DJ, 6 million, 7 million guaranteed. I mean, is that realistic, or is he above that as he pushed into that? I mean, that's the thing with Shaquille. When Shaquille sets that watermark at 14.5 million per year, Brendan, like what is the guy who's 80%, who's actually maybe just as good of a player, just doesn't have 6-foot build and 4.4, 4.38 speed? What is he worth then on the free agent market at that point? Because they're smart in the NFL. They'll find value. They'll see the value out there. Hey, $9 million a year per year for him. We'll go $5.5 million less for a guy who's exactly as good as Shaquille on a 3. I think that some team's going to put that down, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think somebody will maybe do that.
DJ Reed's having a pretty extraordinary year. He's allowing less than 50% completion with no pass rush. We don't rush the passer, and he's having a great year.
Yeah.
He did give up that touchdown to George Kittle in this game. I mean, that was kind of an ugly play. Quandre Diggs was probably involved too. But he's having a pretty remarkable year when you compare him to what we've seen other corners do in this defense when we don't get to the quarterback. Like I mean, Shaq Griffin last year was getting abused, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like somebody's going to look at that and be like, hey, this is a $10 million a year player. I'm kind of feeling like we might go that way. I
can't bring him back
don't
to that
know.
price, dude. You can't. We can't pay that price at that point.
Yeah, because look, if you're going to keep Wilson, you got to invest that money on the offensive line, okay?
Bingo.
I mean, you can't mess around like that unless you get very, very lucky, which I'll get into in a minute here. But so you go into next offseason, let's say Trey Brown is one of your starting outside linemen, and cornerbacks, and then your other one is Sidney Jones. That's suddenly not looking that bad. And I don't want to fall in love with a guy for a few good games, but Sidney Jones is genuinely getting better with each game that he plays, which shocks me because I thought that guy was trash at first. I was completely out on Sidney Jones. So that's interesting, at least.
Your early assessment was correct, though. He was playing like trash out the jump. It was really bad. It was every bit right where Trey Flowers was, if not worse than the performance of what Trey Flowers was. And that's saying something to start the year. And he has remarkably gotten better. What's jumped out to me, and this is the single biggest thing that should jump out to you with a zone cover corner, is their moment of break on the ball. Because the zone cover corner obviously is oftentimes going to be taking those sort of false steps backwards, like cover 3 bail technique. You're going to be kind of at the snap going backwards, right? So you're always having to kind of drive and react on the ball. And the thing you saw, the back-to-back plays he made in this game, for instance, the slant route, where he comes up in the slant route when you got you as a corner covering bail 3 and you're going out, and the slant's going like this. If you think about it, it's going basically the opposite direction from your initial break off the snap. But he flips the hips, or I'm thinking of DJ Braid. I'm sorry. I just thought DJ Reed on that. I just got him confused. But that's what he's been doing as well in a couple of these same breakups. He'll drop back in space. You mentioned, I think, the last week on my channel with the previous week's game, where he looks like he's 4 yards off the ball, drives up on it and makes a play. Doesn't get the pick like he did the week before, which should have been an interception. He should have a pick, and a pick 6, frankly. But this is what his game is. If you go back and watch his Washington film, it was the same thing. You'd see a zone defender sit back, keep his eyes up on the quarterback, and react as soon as that he sees the receiver break, especially when he's at the stem of his route. And he just got that natural same kind of. It's not Sherman, okay, but it's like a Sherman kind of feel where you just, man, this guy's pure fit for a zone-based cover scheme, which is what Carroll's going to have you run majority of the time. So I think this is what happens when you get the player who's getting the right fit to the right defense, as opposed to a defense who goes and grabs a player and tries to, Jamal Adams him into their scheme.
Yeah. Okay, so that caught my eye. The other thing that kind of caught my eye on defense was Jordan Brooks. I think he played a good game. He held up in coverage. According to PFR, he only allowed 1 catch that whole game for 13 yards. Now, granted, he wasn't usually the one covering George Kittle, which is good, which, thank God Norton's at least smart enough to do that, right?
Thank God. Yeah, amen. You do not put
that. Yeah. No, thank you. And we still got destroyed by Kittle. Don't get me wrong. But
I know,
at least
but it
we
was
didn't do
still
that.
probably better than what it would have been if you had manned him up with, because of course Brooks is the natural at the will, going to be usually allotted within this defense most of the time to the tight end. So it's they probably thought of that ahead of time. And went, yeah, let's avoid that.
Yeah, but he had a good game. He held up against the run. He was a big part of the reason why we were successful in our run defense for one of the first times this year. And doing well against the Niners run game is no joke. They have a good run game. They have the coach who is maybe the best in the league at scheming a great run game. So I take a lot of positive things from that. So that was encouraging to me because Jordan Brooks is going to be here next year 100%.
100%.
Yeah. And the final thing, and the thing that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about here, because my comments have been blowing up with these two guys lately, Stone Forsythe and Jake Curhan, because they both got on the field. And okay, so let's start with Jake Curhan, because he played most of that game. And I want to be clear about something. He did not play good. He did not. He actually gave up a couple of sacks. However, once he went in there, the offense became viable. Those first couple drives with Kyle Fuller, not viable at all. I don't think we had a single good play on offense, and he was getting completely abused. Once Curhan got in there, he gave up a couple sacks, but the offense at least became capable of doing something. So we might see more Curhan if Damian Lewis and Kyle Fuller are out this week, which is possible. So to me, that's something to watch. Can Jay Curhan prove he at least belongs on an NFL team?
Well, and I've got a pretty wide assessment on this one. I think that the guys, I guess the first question I'd pose to you is, do you think this speaks more to what Curhan's bringing to the field versus just getting Haynes off the field?
No, Fuller.
For getting Fuller off the field,
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it speaks more to getting just Fuller off the field. That's what he's not a guy who should be playing center, much less playing guard. This team
Mm-hmm.
has a complete blind spot in understanding that there are different positions on the offensive line, and that just because an offensive lineman's one position at one spot doesn't mean you just move him to another one and he'll be just as good at that other spot, or it'll be just a minor backtrack. You'll get a huge backtrack in that respect. Now, was Curhan probably better than Fuller? I mean, maybe he was our second worst rated offensive player in this game. He was 0.2 points behind Gerald Everett, who himself was responsible for 3 turnovers. And I know that there's those sacks, but of course, PFF takes into the full account of every play that the guy played throughout. I actually like long term him on this roster as a depth guy. Curhan, I'd like him as a right tackle and a right tackle only. He's a guy with a very, very limited amount of athleticism. He is not going to be able to move in space, and he's too dang big to get any kind of leverage in the run game at the guard position. Part of the reason why we had the 3 yards in the cloud of dust within this game. With Stone, a little bit of a similar situation. His best positions is going to be left tackle. He did fine in this game overall and was actually rated better than Curhan. He was, I think, in the top 10 amongst our offensive players, and he accommodated himself well. He's going to be fantastic, I think, in pass protection. That was my biggest reason for being high on this guy, Brendan, was the fact that he's legitimately a very good pass protector from day one when he walks onto a football field. He's not going to get much done for you in the run blocking game. That's usually kind of what you need, though, at the right tackle, even above the left tackle. That's why eventually he's more like Curry, and these are more going to be backup swing tackle types. I know people will want to see these guys have a future and upside and all that, but there's a reason one of them was 6th round pick. There's a reason one of them was a undrafted guy. And it's really, you're not, in my opinion, going to find those guys that are going to be able to get out there and start for you. But again, foresight and pass protection, everyone's going to love what they see out of him because he's going to be very hard to beat in that respect anytime he's in the game.
Yeah, he was going up against Bosa, and he did fairly well.
Yeah.
There was some film breakdown on Twitter on him where he was like up against Bosa 6 times in that game and didn't allow any pressure and only got helped once, I think was the official number. PFF gave him a grade of like 68, which is, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny sample size, but people really like seeing him get out there, and they really like seeing him play effectively. And as for the Curhan thing, what I'm taking away from that is that he at least wasn't getting blown up every single play the way Fuller seems like he is.
You won't do that to Curhan. I mean, he's a monster of a man, and he's not gonna. You're at the very least gonna get. He'll neutralize his guy. He'll get a stalemate. Essentially. And Brendan, I'll say this: if the Hawks want to move to more of a pass happy approach attack, okay, and lean more now on having offensive linemen that can pass protect. And maybe run blocking is their deficiency, as opposed to for the last 10 years, every time they've chosen an offensive lineman, they've made the choice in the other direction. It's always about what they can do as a run blocker first. And then, if there's some gravy, we'll get some pass protection in there if they've got that to their game. Here's a guy in foresight. If you want to look long-term, either at right tackle or left tackle. I don't know if it'd work right tackle because they got to do so much run blocking, but I think left tackle, he could make it go. But it would have to be in an offense that's going to probably lean towards passing a little bit more than they're going to be running the ball, because he's just not going to be able to open up those holes like a Dwayne Brown did in his prime.
Right. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because to a certain extent, if you're going to give DK Metcalf all the money he's going to want this offseason, and you've already got Lockett, and you're spending this pick on Eskridge, aren't you a little obligated to pass the ball more than you have before if you're going to build your team around those guys?
Mm-hmm.
Like your big money to Metcalf, big money to Lockett, not big money to Eskridge, but he's somebody you brought in that you were really excited to bring in. I don't know. I kind of feel like you got to go that way. Right now, I have no idea who our running backs are going to be next year. You can obviously bring somebody in, but I don't have a ton of confidence we're going to have some Derrick Henry tier running back next year. So that probably is the direction you kind of need to lean. You can kind of do what Kellen Moore is doing in Dallas, where they pass the ball a lot, but they use a lot of play action, and you still have the things that Wilson can thrive in without taking away all his usage. So I don't think that's a bad idea.
Amen. And advanced stats tell us for play action game to work, the whole going cliche narrative was that you needed to have the running game work for the play action to work. That's not the case.
Right.
Analytics are teaching us that you can have play action will work even without a good running game. And when you start having passing, we're back to that old Holmgren style of things where I'm going to use the pass to open up the run. Now, when I'm passing, now I'm getting those linebackers more focused in coverage. The safeties are back in cover 2 all the time. Now I can just kind of come at you and surprise you on the other side of it. And those guys aren't needing to be as much the maulers who we're going to run. We know we're going to run. I'm still going to knock you off the ball because we're just such bad mamma jammas in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the reason why the Stone Forsythe thing is significant, I don't know if he's going to play this week. It sounds like Shell is okay. So if that's the case, then I kind of expect Shell to play because Carroll, not that Carroll's the only head coach who does this, but he's stubborn with this stuff. He is.
Yeah.
He gets it in his head that this guy's better than that guy. He's not going to be moved off that. Kyle Fuller is a great example of that. Kyle Fuller got graded a 0 against Washington, which I didn't even think was possible.
Yeah, he found a way.
Yeah. And then he starts again against the 49ers. And it just makes me wonder, what do you do in practice? Because I saw Jake Curhan, who went in and he was bad, but he was better than Fuller. I'm also seeing Phil Haynes not being activated when I think he would be better than Fuller. I'm like, what are you doing?
The Phil Haynes one gets me. If we go and if I look up right now on Pro Football Focus, Phil Haynes' grade in 2019 when he was a rookie and his level of play that he gave you, he was not in the 20s at any point in time like Curhan gave us this last week or Fuller. Yet they don't bring him up to the active roster when anytime he performed, including the Packer playoff game, where though he was not able to open up a lot of holes, he was fairly solid in pass protection in that Packer playoff game. And this goes to my point. I sounded like I overstated it maybe a little bit, but it's literally in the last 10 years when they look at every offensive lineman, and up until this last draft with Stone, for instance, every offensive lineman, you can go back. Posick, better run blocker than pass blocker. Damian Lewis, better run blocker than pass blocker. Why did Mark Lewinsky go away and become suddenly this good player with the Colts, sign a contract extension with the Colts, but yet he couldn't seem to sit here as a guard when we had a desperate need for guards? Isn't that weird? Because he's a pass protector first over a run blocker. He's a fairly overall good player solidly throughout, but he's more of a pass blocker. Carroll shies away from that. To your point, yes, he's not going to put Stone Forsythe back out there because Carroll always leans back away from looking for Shell. What Shell? Run blocker first. It sounds like I'm being simplistic and I'm like being mocking, but it's not. It's the way they do it at every turn. When they make a choice on the offensive line, it's first and foremost with the value of how good is he a run blocker though? And then the pass blocking always kind of comes into second. And again, I think that's how you end up with Fuller at left guard in this game, which was to me silly. There's no way he's better than Phil Haynes at left guard, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of guys he's not better than. I think you could have moved, not he's injured, but Jamarco Jones there, he would have been better. You could have had Cedric Ogbuehi. I know he's not on the team anymore. And yet Fuller's the guy who gets to stick around. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's why the word I use with this organization right now is that they're kind of on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just say like, okay, Fuller's here. He's going to start. I don't need to watch the film to see how bad he was last game. I don't need to watch him in practice. No, he's just going to start because he's there. And honestly, if Damian Lewis is out for this game and Kyle Fuller can go and Jake Curhan can go, then I would expect Fuller to probably get the start again. And again, neither option is really good, but I know which one is more exciting to me. I've seen the Kyle Fuller movie a few times. I've already seen it. I don't need to see it again. At least let me see a new movie.
Well, and we're building the future, which, like to my point, if we have Stone Forsythe and Jake Curhan as both of our basic swing tackles into the future, who are cheap with ability to maybe play a little bit inside in Curhan's case, super cheap for the next 2 years on basically 6th round and undrafted rookie deals. That's how you build a roster appropriately, where you have that depth we've been calling for throughout the last couple of years. So I get as much excited. Maybe they're not the long-term answers there as the starters, but as spot starters, as rotation guys, knowing now we got an extra game in the season now, and you're going to need to rely more on depth as we move forward. It is worth getting excited. I'm with you. I'd rather see what we got in Curhan, even if he's kind of playing out of what position I think he'd naturally be at. At least you're getting him snaps. You're getting him reps at the NFL level. You're getting him used to it.
Yeah. And, that's what this part of the season should be used for. I know Carroll has protested that. He doesn't like playing young guys for the sake of playing young guys, or however he put it. But now's really the time to start considering doing that. And I hope we see that going forward. So I think that's about it from the 49ers game. It was good to get a win. It was good to see some of these things. But we all know that if we see some of the old things against Houston or against the Rams, we're going to be right back where we were a couple of weeks ago. So things can change quickly in the NFL. You got to be willing to stay on top of it. So let's talk about the first big headline drop that we got late last week. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you've talked about it a lot already. Jody Allen reportedly not happy, does not see this as a 1-year thing. When you heard that, what were your thoughts on that, and where are you with that right now?
Most encouraging news that we've heard as a Seahawks fan in 2.5 months. Beyond any player acquisition or potential trade or whatever we're hearing, this is the most encouraging news, because the worst fear for every Seahawks fan out there, and wherever you stand, whether you're pro Russell, pro Carroll, pro everybody staying, pro everybody being gone, no matter what, every one of you in any side of the fence you stand on with that should be excited by knowing that Jody Allen is engaged on this truly, and that she does have a level of care. Now, probably maybe a little bit of this is going to be the proofs in the pudding for me. Okay, you put out a PR statement here where you said that this is going to be the case. And Brendan, I had somebody come in my chat who had a mom who went to some event, for whatever that's worth, where Jody was there and asked her about it directly. So I don't know if there's anything to that either, but she said there's changes are coming. But the fact that at least we're getting word that she's not so obtusely out of it, as far as her with Vulcan and this whole situation where she just doesn't, she's on an island somewhere in the South Pacific and Seahawks, what's going on with them? But that she's at least willing to put this PR statement out as an indicator and a sign that there is a level of care there. And I've always maintained on this, Brendan, is that she has what she has by her brother. She's trying to honor his legacy. She's shown that at every step of the way so far. It was understandable, in my opinion, to give Carol even the contract extension when she did last year. I didn't agree with it, but I could understand where her mentality was in the respect of, I don't think it was just her saying, keep the rowboat just going down the river. It was her, that Carol was her brother's hire. Carol was one of her brother's most successful hires. He got one of his most prized possessions, the Seahawks, to the Super Bowl twice. And so she knows that and understands that and is going to continue that on. But she also has in the back of her mind, in my opinion, Brendan, I'm guessing here, okay? Back of my mind, she's saying, I'm also going to, though, honor this if this goes off the rails. If this completely looks broken now and not right, I'm not honoring him by letting that remain that way just because that's his last hire. Then that guy needs to go and I got to move out through. And that this is a high priority. If I'm Jody, I would consider this a high priority situation of all the things I inherited from Paul Allen. By all metrics, he really cared about the Seahawks and he really loved the Seahawks. And then he backed it up with coin, right? He put a lot of his own money into that stadium. So I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm speaking hopefully, Brendan. Maybe from the bottom of my heart, I'm hoping, because we need this to get the change. Because once you get change, then things are on the road to fixing.
Right, absolutely. And I made a video a few days ago about how will Jody Allen change her mind if we finish 5-1, which is totally possible. Like, we end up going 8-9, only losing to the Rams. Like that is totally on the table if the Cardinals rest starters. Like that might not even be hard. We might be favored in every game we play the rest of the year, except for the Rams.
Yeah.
That's on the table at least. So I was thinking about that, but I hope that she realizes the expectations that were coming into this season versus the actual result, and how while winning 8 games is closer to the expectation than winning 5 games, it's still not really that close to it. That'll be interesting to see, because I do think we're going to win some games here to close the season, because this opposition we have is so weak. I would not be surprised if we ended up getting to 8 wins, and then we have a rather difficult decision to. We might have some difficult decisions to make there, but to your point about honoring the legacy, it's certainly not honoring Carroll's legacy either if you let him stick around without success for so long that the fan base starts to resent him more than they appreciate him. Like winning a Super Bowl does not guarantee you're going to be remembered fondly by that fan base. Like, look at Brian Billick. Now, I don't want to compare Pete Carroll to Brian Billick. Pete Carroll did way more to get this team to a Super Bowl than Billick did to get the Ravens to the Super Bowl. But regardless, Brian Billick was the head coach when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and I don't think Baltimore has any real adoration for him. I think they kind of think he's a doofus. And them firing him was the best thing they ever did, because they got Harbaugh, and he's been great for them. So his legacy in Seattle is not immune just because he won one Super Bowl, not at all. And it certainly isn't honoring Paul Allen's legacy if you allow his greatest hire to run his reputation into nothing by the end of his tenure here, which I think will happen if he is allowed to have like 3 bad seasons before he hangs it up here at the end. I mean, the fan base, like we saw that Cardinals game. The fan base spent 3 hours booing him. How bad do you think it's going to be in 2 years if we keep losing? It's going to be a lot worse.
I think another year. You did another year of a season like this, where it's not only bad football, but it's like avert your eyes. Put your hand over your kids' eyes. Don't let them watch this kind of bad football. As you said, they're booing from the first quarter to the fourth quarter in the stadium. These are things that are absolute signs that we need change. And if you continue on with this, it's only going to get worse. It went from my standpoint. I'm sure you taken your pulse check on this as well within your subscribers and chat as well. But it went from me talking about last season with Carroll going, man, I don't know about that extension. This is kind of like, it's a little bit, and people go, no, he's deserved. Like, he'll be great. He'll be here for all time. He's you're underappreciating him. Oh, blah, blah, all the same old stuff that people say with their simplistic arguments is in regards to whenever you talk about change of one of these Seahawks stalwarts, be it Carroll or Wilson. But now you see the sea change shift this season to where it's the majority overwhelming in my chat, and what I see over online is people going, ready for a move on, ready for something new overall. There's still those Carroll people out there that are the pro, he could still find the way kind of thing. But I think it's really shifted to almost a culture change like shift here in Seattle in the ways being viewed in this sort of one season of this. You put a second one on top, Brendan, and I think that would absolutely unravel things to a large degree. It'd still be appreciated. He still won the Super Bowl, but he would be getting closer and closer to maybe into that Brian Bilke kind of point of things. I think Billick also gets a little bit because he inherited that defense where at least Carroll's I built the defense, but I think the point still stands. It is you can wear your welcome out.
Yeah, no absolutely. I was really encouraged by the Jody Allen comments. I think that the people who are assuming that Jody Allen's going to be part of the problem going forward need to slow down a little bit and understand that she's not going to fire Pete Carroll in the middle of the season. Like, that would be kind of disrespectful. That's something you do to a coach who is, never accomplished anything. That's something you do when you're like 0-9 and it's over and the guy's just bad and the team has quit. Like, this team is not quitting. They play bad. They do bad things. They do stupid stuff. They do suboptimal things, but they haven't quit. If we went out against the Niners this week and lost like 42-6, then I would have said, okay, let's really think about keeping Carroll around here. Maybe he needs to go this week just so we can see a watchable product for the rest of the year. But you're not going to fire a guy like Pete Carroll midseason. That just, you don't see that. It's disrespectful.
What does it accomplish? That's the thing too. What does it? There's a little bit of this. I like the article yesterday with the Wilson things. Like, what does it? Think about this. What does this really accomplish? Like, you fire Carroll? What does that do for you versus waiting till the off season? You've got no real head start on finding coaches. It's not going to work that way. To me, it's a matter of it. It's not going to accomplish much of a PR win at that point. So I agree with you. I would not have understood the reason to go to that realm of it. You wait on the off season on this one. I kind of feel that way with college too, the college coaches, where it's like firing a mid-year is just, to me, sometimes like, unless it's really off the rails, really bad, it's kind of silly.
Yeah. All right. So that was the Jody Allen thing. That was very encouraging. We also had a little bit of drama over the last 24 hours around the Russell Wilson stuff. I'm sure you're aware. Jordan Schultz of the infamous Schultz family, apparently. I did not know. Apparently, he's related to Howard Schultz.
Is this SOB coming back? Is it not enough? It's not enough your family took our basketball team away. Now you have to come in here and piss on our football team as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true, but I had some comments on my video this morning saying that he's related to Howard Schultz. So I was like, wow, okay, well, there's a little bit of, I don't know what you would call that, serendipity. Maybe it's not even serendipity, but so he comes out with this report saying that Wilson would waive his trade clause to these 3 teams. And then we got the Wilson defense force kind of leaped in and was like, no, this is not true. This is the most untrue thing I've ever seen. Jake Heaps, who always capes up for Russell Wilson, was there. John Clayton staked his journalistic credibility on the report being fake, et cetera, et cetera. So
John says the Russell Wilson trade, not just that report, but in general, the Russell Wilson trade talk stuff or him leaving town, he says, is the most overblown story in his covering the 50 years in the NFL. I thought that was an interesting comment because he sometimes doesn't seem as piped in or connected into the organization as he once did, let's say 10 years ago. And I think he's sometimes pulling stuff out of the dark with that a little bit on his in 50 year stuff. But we'll see. But I do think that the Schultz thing was BS. It was breaking live as I was live streaming yesterday, and we literally through the show. By the end of the show, we'd realized now it's all bunk, and it makes sense because again, you come back to you always with these stories have to ask yourself, what's there to gain here? And when you look at the offseason and why the stuff broke the way it is, when you look at Colin Cowherd, who is piped into Mark Rogers, Russell Wilson's agent, and who is fed information, and there's that exists in media, and you can see those type of things. And certain personalities come out at certain spots where then, okay, maybe I should listen to this guy if he is saying something because there's something he's trying to relay from somebody else. It may not be the truth, but it's what one side wants to get out as far as a narrative goes. That's what last season's off-season tour with Wilson was in not only the open interviews that he gave, right, but also the stuff that was being released through the background of things. Now, the reason he did that was to lay, at least I contend, Brendan, he did that to lay the foundation for eventually a possibility, not an eventuality, a possibility, okay? A possibility that if things went wrong this next season in Seattle, he could go and the PR hit would be minimal. So he laid that groundwork. That's been accomplished. So when you talk about this story coming out, it's one of two things, either trying to force a trade now, which we know can't happen because the trade deadline's gone, or number two, he's continuing to lay the groundwork, laying that foundation so it eases, just a nice easing out of town at that point. But you already did that. This is redundant. This accomplishes nothing more but actually hurting you, making you look like, oh, now you're, you have your first game and bet good in 3-4 weeks and it's coming back, and now you're piping about trading again. I don't buy it. I didn't buy it at the time. And it's a guy this is the age of journalism we're in. It's frankly, Brendan, why we get the followings we do at this point, I would contend you, because we're being honest and truthful and not trying to just generate clicks on BS, but actually deliver information, and which is what people really want at the end of the day, not these kind of clickbaity articles, which is what Schultz put together.
Right. I don't know. Like when Clayton said that, I was like, I don't know if I buy it. Are you really telling me that this Seahawks franchise gets to this offseason and is like, we need 3 new offensive linemen, we need new running backs, we need new tight ends, we need a new defensive line, we need a new linebacker, we need a new safety. We don't have capital, we don't have a ton of money, and then we got this 33-year-old franchise quarterback who's trying to get another Super Bowl. We've got all these things to deal with. We might have to fire this coach. Oh, this team is going to offer us 3 top 15 picks in this draft. That's what people need to remember. Like the Eagles, if you trade with the Eagles, you're not getting first round this year, first round this year, first round this year. You're getting 3 first rounders in the immediate. That is way more valuable than first round picks years down the line.
Yeah.
If it comes to that, it's hard for me to believe the team would just hang up the phone. They would at least have a conversation about it. And I think that there is a very good chance that they would come to the conclusion that it's better for him if we trade him. It's better for us if we trade him. Let's just do it. But yeah, that report, like Wilson wouldn't do that in the middle of the season. There's no point. No. And he wouldn't do it after a win. Like if he did, I would actually be very irritated at him. That's lame. That's very lame if he did that. But yeah, why would he do that?
Right. Well, and again, that's just to my point on that. It's like if a story comes out like this, it's meant to help his PR. It's meant to not hurt his Q rating. This story, when it breaks and comes out after 24 hours, is actually a little bit of a hurt to his Q rating. This is why you see him address it with the overstatement today in his press conference, where it's like, no, I want to be here through 20 years, at my career, like, because he has to combat it in that way because of the story. He's not going to want to combat this and be talking about that in the press conference. So it absolutely wasn't his people leaking it. Seattle certainly wouldn't need to leak it. They already know they'll have people interested, right? And that's the other thing I've said about this is if this was also, let's say this was a leak by Russell Wilson's camp to like let those teams know he's interested. All that stuff gets accomplished in back channels, right? You can go, right. We know that stuff happens. Let's not play like we're all children. We know that Wilson's people could talk to New Orleans people and say, hey, just wait till the offseason. We want to come there. Just get your draft capital up, just how hard of a conversation is that, really at the end of the day. So I you don't need to do it and through it. It never made any sense to me, this whole story.
Yeah, you just do it like Earl Thomas did it, and you go up to the opposing coach after the game and say,
That's
"Hey,
it.
come get me." Yeah.
Just say, hey, just come on, man. That's more straightforward, face to face,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we do have a game coming up this week. We're playing in the lovely 10 a.m. spot where we always win, I
Oh yeah,
guess.
we own it.
Pretty much always win. Incredible track record there compared to the Holmgren era. And we are playing the Houston Texans, a team that has punted on a season harder than I've seen a team punt on a season in a little while. A couple guys in my chat last night, we were talking a little bit about this game, and they said this is a full team of cast-offs from other teams. The only legitimately good player they have playing for them right now is Laramie Tunsil. Everyone else they picked off somebody's garbage pile pretty much, like Brandon Cooks. David Johnson was a throw-in the DeAndre Hopkins trade. Guys like Justin Britt off our garbage pile, which is really bad. Desmond King like it's a bunch of guys who are just there to collect a paycheck. And I don't have a whole lot to say about this Houston team. I don't know what they do. I don't think they do anything well. Looks like we're going to get Davis Mills instead of Tyrod Taylor. So lay it on us, Brandon. What do you got to say about this Texans team?
If you're going to be a team that's looking to the future, you want to win, and you're going to punt on a season, then you should accumulate assets, offload, save cap space, et cetera, et cetera. The Houston Texans were faced with a quandary about having Deshaun Watson kind of at that point before the stories broke with those off the field stuff. He said, I want out of town. It was kind of a big leap by him to want to, because he just signed that contract extension. It was going to make it almost impossible for them to move him, but they didn't move him, held him. Now he's a depressed asset. They went in this offseason essentially going for C-level free agents across the board and filled their team out with that, which isn't hard to see why it's underperforming. You're not going to get far with that. You don't know what their direction is going forward. Bill O'Brien absolutely set the barn on fire on his way out of the farm. And that's a little bit of the problem at play here. But they are a team that doesn't have a lot of threats that they can throw at you. You mentioned Brandon Cooks. Interesting question I want you to answer in a second is Brandon Cooks has another 4,000-yard seasons on this year. Is he a Hall of Famer, Brandon?
I hope not. I mean, it took Terrell Owens and Chris Carter years to get into the Hall of Fame. Michael Irvin took 2 extra years. Like, if we're going to hold those guys out, we better keep Brandon Cooks out, because I know who is better between those guys and Brandon Cooks.
So I totally hear you on this. And it's just that he's been a guy that sort of has sneaking up in this respect, but he only got into the league in 2014. He's already at 7,600 yards. He's going to crack another 1,000-yard season this year. He's still relatively young. He's probably easily going to pull another 1,000-yard seasons, which is going to vault him into somewhere about 12,000 receiving yards in the NFL, which would put him about 3,000 more than, let's say, Michael Irvin, for instance. And I agree with you. Irvin's obviously a better receiver, but it's just one of those interesting questions as we reach into this era about how we determine what a Hall of Famer is and where these guys, a lot with, because it's a startling amount of, receiving yards he's going to end up with, I think.
I mean, I think people have kind of learned that. Like, John Kitna's stats are close to the Hall of Fame, but nobody's ever going to put him in the Hall of Fame because they know he wasn't that good. There are other examples too, like Vinny Testaverde, I think, has more touchdown passes than Joe Montana, but nobody's going to put Vinny Testaverde in the Hall of Fame because he wasn't good. I think people kind of know the difference between a guy who was great and a guy who just played for a long time.
It may be the case, but once you get to 12,000 receiving yards, the 4 guys above you are all in the Hall of Fame. The 4 guys behind you are all in the Hall of Fame. So if you get to that receiving mark, it's like kind of that magical plateau area where you're, and I've been going on this tangent, but he's really their only threat, I guess, is my base bottom line. One thing you saw this last week that drove me a little bit nuts on this, Brendan, let's see if this applies this week, is that you're going into a game where you have an offense that doesn't have a lot of talent, or they're down maybe their main playmaker. So maybe what you want to do then is kind of lock on the whatever other threat they have, lock in on that, i.e. a lot of double teaming, take that away and force them at that point to go at their weak targets. And you saw last week, okay, Deebo Samuel's down. Brandon Ayuk's been up and down this season throughout. Maybe we double team George Kittle. Maybe we bracket him like a majority of the plays. And instead the guy goes for 120 yards on you in the first half. And you go, guys, so why I bring up Brandon Cooks again is he's their only offensive threat. David Johnson's averaging about 3.3 yards per carry this year. He's not a threat. They traded off the other guy back to New Orleans, their other running back that they had got in free agency, Mark Ingram. So, they're not going to be much of a threat there in that respect. Tunsil's a great lineman, but that's really their only really upper level lineman. So, do you take Brandon Cooks away? Do you double him? I would be bracketing the hell out of him in this game, my opinion. That's really a lot of the key in this game because you shut him down. There's not much else there for them offensively. They've got David Mills, who I liked last year. By the way, don't look too long at his neck, Brendan. Don't look at the Mills neck too long. He's got the biggest giraffe neck you've ever. It makes Merton Hanks look like he's got a short neck, like a stubby neck. Your eyes will become fixated. You'll lose yourself in the game. It's just incredibly long. It's freakish. Like you got to Google it and look it up. It'll like once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the kid actually had some talent. He was right there behind Kellen Mond as the next guy as the truly that next, and then it was a drop off at the quarterback prospect play beyond those two guys. He has some talent. His big long neck helps, but he's still a rookie. And he still was really rough coming out of Stanford. So you should be able to take advantage of that game. Offensively, Brendan, you can put points on this team defense. We know they can put points on this defense. The key is can you not fall into the easy here trappings, which is you could probably blow the doors off the Texans by hitting your deep shots, by going for the moon shots. But the way to beat them this week in order to prepare for the Rams is short passes. That's what's been, the Niners did this against the Rams a couple weeks ago when they kind of blew them out, is attacked them with the short passing and the running game. That you're going to need the short passing game against the Rams. It's part of the reason they've dominated you defensively so often. This is another week to build off the back of what you did last week. Just keep working, just keep peppering in those short passes. You may not get as many points as you would be able to blow up, but you'd at least get to stay getting more effective in that aspect of your team.
Right. And that's also keeping time of possession. Like your drives take longer. You're going to keep the ball longer. Your defense stays on the sideline. And that, in some regards, is sometimes more important than just scoring. Whenever all your scoring drives are these 2-play, 3-play drives, that actually becomes kind of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that. And I think that's going to be the recipe for success against most teams. I think any team that has studied Russell Wilson and knows how he plays, that has a modicum of football intelligence, is going to know, okay, this guy really likes the deep ball. This guy likes to play outside the numbers, so we're going to guard against that. And it could take months of Wilson doing other things before defenses go, oh, we can't do that anymore. We got to look at things a slightly different way. We got to take the short stuff away now and maybe surrender more of that deep stuff sometimes, because he's just going to check us down until they have 45 points on the board.
They've slid into cover 2 defense now 24/7 on us. We're getting cover 2 safeties back off the line. This is important because you don't see an 8th man in the box. And yet, when you look at our running attack right now, right? Last week, there's no rushing yards there. So if you actually look, there was a stat on Twitter, I'm sure you saw a couple weeks ago come out, that Seattle has seen as many light boxes in the NFL as any offense in the NFL. Many 7-man fronts, basically. That's a light box versus an 8-man, 9-man, box look. And you should be able to run on that, but you've not been able to run on that. There's reasons for that. We're not going to get into it, but you're not able to run on it. There's only really 2 ways to attack a defense going into cover 2 at that point. And if you can't run the ball, you got to do it with the short passing attack. There's no really third rung way to do it outside of that at that point in time, because it's going to take away the deep stuff. There's no 2 ways about it.
Yeah. And I have been a passive defender of this offensive line in recent times. I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is. However, the run blocking has genuinely deteriorated to basically nothing this year. The run blocking is terrible right now. So you're not really going to be able to run the ball effectively even against these small boxes, these lean boxes. But yeah, I agree. It's going to take a while to take teams out of that cover too. Yeah, they're going to drop their safeties back until you give them a reason to not. Real quick, I want to highlight this comment real quick just to confirm it. Howard Schultz is Jordan Schultz's father, if you Google it. So there you go. Maybe that explains some of this.
Oh, my God. Is it not enough? Have you not done enough, Schultz? Have you not done enough?
Boy. Well, yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but nothing positive, I guess. I got nothing positive to say about that.
Well, he's getting a lot of shade today, so it's nice watching him getting taken to the woodshed right now.
He has a reputation for this. Apparently, he posted some false report about John Wall, and then John was like, "No, that dude's a liar. I did not say that. I would never say that. I don't think that." So there you go.
Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not I'm not worried. I'm not too worried about this game. I think we're going to win. I think we're probably going to win pretty handily. I know it's in Houston, but at this point, are Texans games even selling out? Are they even filling that stadium? I doubt it.
No.
Are the fans going to be in the game? What is there to root for this year? Why would you pay $1 to go to a Texans game right now? Maybe they're building for the future a little bit with guys like Davis Mills, but a lot of their roster is guys like Justin Britt who have no place there for the future. So I don't.
They got no
hope.
I mean, outside of somebody throwing them a king's ransom from Watson, which he's basically destroyed his own value for that. I do see this as a 2-touchdown game as well, but that you talk about a franchise without any kind of real hope going forward. I mean, even beyond the Lions, I say they're really that team that is in the worst. At least with the Lions, they got a left tackle for the future. They're going to have draft picks from the Rams. The Jaguars got Trevor Lawrence, and they can start to build around him. What do you got if you're the Texans looking forward right now? I mean,
maybe you got Laramie Tunsil, but even he's not young anymore. He's not old, but he's not young. And as we've seen this year with Dwayne Brown, the cliff could be coming for him sooner rather than later. By the way, Laramie Tunsil actually on IR right now, so he's not even playing. I'm just talking about him in general. I kind of like Jacob Martin, but he's not amazing, and he's not super young anymore either. He's like, what, 4th-year player now. So
they got to pay him this offseason too. And they're paying 23, I think, to Tunsil, which is, you talk about a ridiculous price to be paying for a guy who's really he's like a top 7 tackle in the league. He's not a top 3. It's like a top 7 left tackle, and they're paying upper market prices for him. But I think with Jacob, he's in a free agent year this year.
He is. I actually wanted to trade for him last year when the Texan season was falling apart. I was thinking they'd give him away, but he's all right. Why didn't they look at him
at the deadline, Brendan? Why didn't we look at him at the Texans would have offloaded him at the deadline, right? What would he cost, a 5th-round pick to bring him onto this team when we needed some pass rushing help? I mean, I'm not saying he would have lit the world on fire, but you didn't have a lot of options anyway. It wasn't like you had a pick of your litter. So was that the worst of a place to go? Was that really the Texans not really going to give up their Jacob Martin in his contract year at the trade deadline for some assets, a team that needs assets?
Yeah, so I'm going to say something like, I kind of feel like 31-10. I think it's going to be kind of like the Jaguars game. I think we're going to take care of business. I don't want to get too caught up in one good game and one win, which was, by the way, not even that good. But I like the fact that Carroll seems to be in kind of effort mode where he will, I know he didn't call it, but he was comfortable with allowing us to do a fake punt deep in our own territory. Even that final drive for the Seahawks where they had the 4th and inches inside the 5 and they went for it and picked it up. That was a situation where, honestly, you could have kicked a field goal and it's not that big of a deal. Like, I would have been okay with that.
I think it's a horrible call on Carroll's part there. It drives me crazy. That call drove me crazy, Brendan.
Like, and that's it. I love going for it on 4th down. Even I would have been okay with a field goal there because it almost ends the game. But he did actually go for it there, and we got it, and it would have worked out if somebody wasn't shaving points. But I think he is kind of going into like, okay, you know what? I got to just start messing around a little bit here. So I think that's probably going to be good, especially against a team like the Texans, where if you do a flea flicker against that defense, they will probably leave somebody wide open because they're really bad. It's not going to be like the Niners when we tried the flea flicker on them and Lockett was still in double coverage. So I'm going to say something like 31-10. I feel all right about it.
I'll match you on that score. I've been seeing it as a 14-point plus win. I think this is a blowout. I think this, somebody said like last year, this is our Jets game of last year, where you're right about that same time of year. You're catching that team about the same time. They're thinking of Cancun vacations at this point. You're still mathematically in it. So I'll still go and land on that spot of it as well. And I'm with you on Carroll. Look, I said it's the return of Big Balls Pete last week. And that's a wondrous sight to see because I think Pete's at his best when he is being aggressive. And let's face it, if you're going to go down swinging. Don't go down on your knees.
Yeah. And again, I would have been fine with us kicking a field goal on that last drive, but I do appreciate the fact that he took a chance there and decided to be aggressive. Maybe that wasn't the spot for it, but I just appreciate the mentality because it's something that we shy away from so much. And I think that's really all I got for this game. I mean, there's nothing to talk about with this Texans team, man. They're not trying to lose, but I don't think they're trying very hard to win. I don't even know who their head coach is off the top of my head. I seriously can't even remember who it is. And it's just
Siriano or something, I think.
No, that's the Eagles guy,
That's
Nick Sirianni.
I don't know it either right now. I can't remember his name either. It's
Yeah.
probably it's it's one of those like you don't work here very long. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
learn it. He's gonna be out that door by the time you get lunch.
Yeah, we're ahead of the curve here because they're not going to remember his name in Houston next
No.
year probably.
No.
But I think that's all we really got to cover. I want to thank everybody for coming out to the stream today. We got like 110 people in here. Thank you, Brandon, for coming out to the stream today. Appreciate it.
Love it, man. Anytime.
Yeah. We got a win this week. I think we're going to get another one this week, so we're going to have some more optimistic talking points. But hey, we're still looking at this with an eye towards better days when you're not 4-8 and you've got like a 2% chance at the playoffs. Hopefully we can get back to the point where you're 8-4 and you've got a 92% chance at the playoffs. We're going to keep working towards that.
I'd say we wear a couple hats. We're in them now, and we're looking in the future at both times. We can do them both.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Brandon. And as always, go Hawks.
Hey, go Hawks.